Continuing on with our lecture series, the next talk is going to come from Stefan Dumitrascu. He's going to be talking about your SOC environment with AI and some of the work that he's set up at Artifact Security. So, Stefan, welcome and over to you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Hey. All right. Hey, everybody. There's no point introducing myself again, I guess. But this is me. AMTSO board member, CEO of Artifact Security. We've started this year, really, in March. We've done a bunch of research on AI-powered SOC. To one of the questions before, why we choose the testing we do, is the reason why we wanted to do this one is, if you look at RSA this year and even last year, the amount of security products that either they're just bespoke, that we will empower your SOC to do X better and Y and so on, or big vendors who say that now they have AI in their SOC tools and so on. Yeah, that's our sort of role here, is to try to give you guys as many new methodologies for new approaches to dealing with security. Our goal is to always operate with transparency in our methodologies and test results, and that's something I'm really passionate about. So thank you, Luis, for inviting me to the panel before. We always are looking for new frontiers to reach. So if there's any new cool ways that security is being approached, that's what we're looking to do. Before I actually get on to the point, please join, this is my board member side of things, please join our working groups. There's a real-world protection testing, which we're now calling scam and phishing. There's XDR and the sandbox working group, which does a lot of heavy work. And to the point of biases and so on, the more people join those groups, the less biased testing will be in the future. And just come talk about yourself. People love talking about themselves, so you can come join and tell us stories and how you design your products and what you care about. And you can help us shape the future of testing in a better way, hopefully. Right. So this is a business/enterprise focused talk. So why do businesses buy security products? Anybody just want to shout out of why businesses buy products? Do we have MSPs here and so on, right? So any reasons?
Compliance.
That is my first note right here, is compliance. And that's usually the main thing that pushes the needle forward. You have things like sales. If a really good salesman comes in and says, this is a tool that will solve all your issues. This will, protect you against anything. You also have things like a ransom attack happens to your neighbor in the same industry. You might want to consider a new security product, or if your defenses are good enough. Or in worst case scenarios, and the best customers from the enterprise side is if they've been hacked and then they come to you, that they will have the biggest security budget available is after a breach, because then they actually care about security. So the key point here is that no one business is the same in the reasoning of why and how they choose the product. So our approach here is to empower them as much as possible and inform them on how they should make that decision. So we did a bunch of research, and these 3 types of metrics are from Forrester, where we can look at different types of metrics. We can look at strategic ones, operational, and tactical. And it should just really be viewed as a strategic pyramid that influences the decisions made when assessing what product they want to buy. There's no strict, always correct focus, and our role is to try to get businesses enough information or help them design good security goals for whatever their risk appetite is, or to try to give them just enough information about the security landscape as a whole. A lot of people come to us and ask, like, okay, as an engineer, I wish I could have this product, but I don't know how to convince my management or the finance guys to really consider this. And I don't remember which talk it was earlier about finance departments and so on. I think it was you, David, but it's always, the finance guys always have a different language to speak than my language and your language in terms of the technical side. So if you start speaking their language, it's a lot easier, but you just need to give them the right metrics to look at. And return on security investment, that's a way to get there. So because it's such a subjective thing, we try to have a fake target business, and to the point of emulation before. We went with a completely not ChatGPT generated Xanda HR company, and we create a sort of profile of things. And just like a business, we have priorities in terms of what we care most about in our fake proposed business. And then we also have a sort of FP target change because usability of products are really important when it comes to businesses. And you can have the best, 100% all the time thing, but we all know what alert fatigue is, and so on. So there's a lot of caveats of just chasing that 100% is probably not always the best way. And one of the issues with AI-powered SOC testing is this is not a test that should ever get 100%, and convincing vendors to go public with such a test is the hardest thing ever, because people want to be in high-performing tests. If we ever even get close to comparative in this area, I will be amazed. Let's get sort of a rough idea about how we split our testing here. We have a cloud footprint, which is fairly standard, a couple of protected LANs that are connected, and to try to emulate sort of bring your own device solutions. We also have a bunch of contractors in this fake organization. And we try to also separate it into 3 different operations, where when you look at the tools available to SOC teams, we try to look at reactive operations, proactive, and then for your SOAR, how you can actually customize it and improve it for your own deployment. Now, all of this already is getting quite complex. So I think it was Jan that said that this is a completely ChatGPT term. This is not. It is certifications to us is at the bottom of complexity sort of ladder. You then have evaluations, and then what we're calling comprehensive product evaluations. And it's just due to the nature of how this has to be done, both in terms of test infrastructure and the people involved. Those of you who worked on sort of MITRE testing and so on, they know how complex that testing is. There's a few things not showing up, but whatever. But the whole point of a CP is it's heavily involved on both our side and the vendor. The teams work side by side in literal calls rather than just the usual emails back and forth, maybe at the end of a test period. So it's a very resource-intensive testing that requires a lot of commitment from everybody involved. That's why it's at the very high end of this scale. Now, when we look at these sort of metrics that we want to give, so we proposed these metrics. When we designed this test, this is, again, adding hopefully to the transparency of things, we did our own research where we went and asked AI SOC operators who have actually used these products or SOC cooperators that don't have access to them to sort of see what they wish they would have. And I was really hoping that I would get an answer of like, hey, I really just care about this. And then I can focus my methodology on that. But the answer really is in the middle. So we have to give everybody some information about as much as possible. So to the point, for example, of alert efficiency. I would have thought that everybody just wants almost as little alerts as possible and have things done almost automatically. But depending on the size of your customer, depending on the size of their cybersecurity team, smaller businesses will prefer something to be super automated and just deal with everything by themselves. But we have seen, and we got responses where they said, we don't actually even care about how many alerts are in our console. We'll custom, as long as we can customize later and so on, and even though if it's going to be heavier on our workload, then we'll deal with it, which I was very surprised. Maybe it's, again, their own biases, because I've seen some pretty damn verbose products nowadays where I think if I were to use it in the real life, I would blow my brains out. But yeah. And then we also have the usual sort of detection accuracy and false positive rate, but that's really just one of the key metrics that we have to look at. What is sort of new that isn't really assessed in other evaluations here is time to initial understanding and time to advise and implement. And what we're looking at there is, because we are acting as the fake business, we have people who are really posing as the security operation manager, and we are trying to pretend that we are the actual customers and seeing how well they can inform us. This is obviously a sort of a subjective view of things, but down to the previous point of transparency, as long as we give enough information of how things are done, then hopefully it will be a useful public report as soon as somebody that gets a good enough score would publish. If we go a bit more into these metrics, for time to initial understanding, for example, we really cared more about initial entry endpoints and escalation methods. There's a different analyst firm just calls it time to understand the threat. And I don't really agree necessarily with that, because to fully understand an attacker, you can argue it can take months or even a year, because if you want to establish provenance and attribute it and so on, and that's very, very hard to do. So for us, we define it as initial understanding, so the sort of key points that you want if you're in the trenches and you're being hit by a piece of ransomware, what you really care about is where they are, what part of your infrastructure has been hit, and that's really allows you to then have that sort of contain and remediation, so they sort of lead into each other. And an important part here is, for us, it's really important that we don't want to go into the risk of what MITRE ATT&CK evaluations did before, where all vendors, I've had this discussion a million times, where a vendor or a security enterprise that doesn't really know better, they just want the whole MITRE ATT&CK framework covered, and that's really not a useful thing for anybody. So for us, we've designed the attack groups themselves to not have to detect every single technique between an attack. This is part of a much bigger flowchart that I won't go into too much, and we have these operations that are separate. even though this says day 1 and 2, these are not calendar days, these are just sort of work hours, where the proactive operation requires preventative configuration, so we had to have that change in between this operation and the next one. And then at the very end, after we deal with reactive and the proactive operation, oh, sorry, I misspoke there. But at the end, we rerun the tradecraft. And the important point is the tradecraft, not the exact same samples. We have the same tradecraft. It doesn't mean you use the same sample there to see after it's been optimized what sort of configuration changes were necessary to adapt and how that is being done. So you get that sort of visibility in terms of how configurable the product is for your own environment. Now, for us to have such a complex approach to things, we need a lot of things to happen at the same time. So we have, this is a very rough diagram of the kind of organization itself, where we have the relationship with external suppliers similar to what a national customer has. Thanks to AI, it's a lot easier to have this sort of behavior of real people happening in the background of this target organization. So that's a really welcome addition by Gen AI. But we also need to have, this sort of baseline of behavior that we need to feed into. Okay, this is how the product acts when supposedly there's nothing happening, and then once we start attacking, we'll see this still is happening in the background, like a real environment, and then we're applying the attacking side of things. Having something as complex as this enables you to have a basic scenario like a phishing mail to HR portal, and then some credential abuse and so on, and then you deploy ransomware. I'm oversimplifying everything. I'm not going to get into to details, but this is a very, I would want to say, basic example. So we can go from that to something a lot more complex, like a supply chain attack, where we've seen this in the real world when the customer pulls a new update for whatever software provider they use and so on, and trying to replicate that in our own environment. And it's important to sort of establish that, hey, these are the relationships that this target consumer of this product has, and so on. Now, to do all of these, we have sequenced the attack, and this is an approach we have across most of our tests. We call it intrusion, infiltration, and propagation. Unfortunately, I had to come up with new names for things and so on. But what we really wanted to do is tackle that protection side of things, because I think the detection is fairly straightforward. We can all understand an attack chain. But we didn't want to go into a part of the test where if you just are good at one thing, you will block that one thing, and then we will never be able to go past it. So in the protection execution phase of the testing, we also sort of revert back to after you block that, let's say, intrusion part of things, we'll give you the credit for it and so on, but then we go further and say, okay, let's assume that either I found the evasion methods for that particular security layer, or it wasn't properly configured. What would happen if I go past that stage, and you get scored accordingly? To my earlier example of the 50% of required techniques, we have this approach for the sequence, and I don't know, I'm guessing it's quite small, but as I said before, we don't require specific techniques numbers to get flagged up. We just want to give enough visibility to the operators to understand what has happened. And then on the legitimate side, we separated things between learned behavior and new behavior. So on every run of the test, we come up with new scenarios. And because we have that baseline behavior from earlier over here, we can see, okay, how you react to behavior that you know is there. But then we also introduce, okay, new scenarios and see how the product deals with that. Oh, sorry. A point on transparency here that I keep making, I made earlier in the panel. We give full tradecraft available to both the tested vendor and on public report. And we give detailed text execution both in human and machine readable formats so people can hopefully make their own scoring and so on. Our point is that we want to tell our own story and how we think that the product performed, but we made assumptions about what that business wants to prioritize, like we said earlier. But if you think you should prioritize something else, then you have the information to do that. And it's sort of our way to try to please both the marketing and the engineering departments, where you have the full disclosure of what has happened in the testing, but then hopefully this also entices you to then, even if I give you a lower grade than what you expected, then at least you can then go ahead and say, we want to focus on this part of our product that's done really well. Yeah. In terms of reporting over here, we have thresholds like this. To be honest, I made the slides probably a month and a bit ago. We may have to change the thresholds because just like I said before, when it comes to new approaches and so on, it's always interesting to see where products in the market lie, where if we expect these 90-ish%, you're just not going to get that. And it sort of prevents reports from being public, so we sort of have to slowly adjust and the threshold, so we're considering bringing that down a bit so it gives at least some information to consumers if we're able to publish. We call our top rating super, so S, because like we said earlier before, if you're in that 90-something%, you're probably pretty damn good. So if you're going to make a decision-making process on that, you're going to make it on pricing or usability or whatever product you had before. So yeah, we wanted to separate those sort of products in a separate tier of their own. That is it. Thank you for your time. Sorry if I've been a bit robotic. My voice is almost gone. Thank you.